Welcome to episode 138.
Of No Room for Phonies.
It's being recorded early, but this will be released right on Father's Day because it is a book worth reading called Do Fathers Matter? What Science is Telling Us About the Parent We've Overlooked. And it's by Paul Rayburn. So we're just kind of going to go through the chapters. It's a pretty detailed scientific study kind of a book. But
so the last 30 pages are just the list of references. Although when you read through the text, it does not sound like a school textbook. It's a little bit more
there's more story.
There's more stories and things like that. But if you want the actual research articles, the bibliography is there.
Anyway,
it is about the science, what the science is telling us. So obviously,
there's a lot of research.
So we'll kind of skim over the topics of it and kind of like the significant outcomes of the research without getting into all those details so that you can read them yourself.
So chapter 1 starts out by talking about parenting as a hit and miss affair.
From either parent.
Which is true.
Yep.
And the whole purpose of the book, I believe, is to replace the stereotypes and half-truths with what scientists have discovered to be true about fathering and not about what we think we know about it.
So for a long time, the general pool of research that's been done has generally disregarded fathers. So if you look back over the last 70 years or so, very few studies talk at all about fathers, and in some cases they were deliberately excluded from any consideration. So right away that has thrown the science, like the bias, off of fathers.
And even some of research actually perpetuates the images that are inaccurate and dismissive and unkind. Like even as late as 2013, there was a Clorox ad. I can't remember exactly.
It made fathers look like they couldn't do the wash, that they didn't have the brain capacity to actually wash clothes properly.
Yes. And there's another one about there was a Pampers diaper one or something that they referred to where it's even fathers can use these diapers or whatever.
And actually, whenever that came out, there was a lot of protest, and they had to pull.
I think they pulled the Clorox one as well.
Yeah.
And then
in general, in pop culture, in sitcoms, and in movies, fathers have been portrayed as dumb, dolty, what's the word I'm looking for? Incompetent.
Right.
And so that has definitely biased our culture against fatherhood.
And then he tells a lot of stories about the Aka tribe in Africa, which is a very adult-focused tribe. But everyone cares for the children and the tribe's survival. And there's also a study in chapter 1 about paternally expressed genes that go through male sperm,
So it's not just the Y chromosome.
No.
There's a whole bunch of other genetic codes and things that gets expressed through the father.
And then chapter 2 really talks about all the research around imprinting.
Yeah.
So
I don't even know how to explain imprinting.
Well, it's basically the idea that like the mother duck thing where if the
right. Where if a duck hatches to a human, they imprint the human as their mother.
Right. So they have done a whole bunch of research
on children actually imprinting to their fathers.
Yes.
And starting with in utero, hearing his voice, the vibrations of his voice through the abdominal tissue, and then after birth, in the first few weeks and months, how babies will imprint onto their fathers just by their father's voice and the touch of skin to skin.
Yeah. And then chapter 3 talks about this research that went on from 1979 to around 1990, and it was called the Becoming a Family Project. And it actually, there's a lot of There was a lot of research done on what happens to men during pregnancy.
And in the first few years. So
Yeah.
this was kind of a very new type of research where they focused on both parents.
Right. And so they also, of course, found that men tend to feel better about themselves and about their family relationships when they take a more significant role in running the household and raising the children. And wives also feel better. And they also talk a lot about the hormonal changes that happen to men during pregnancy with testosterone and prolactin and weight gain.
So testosterone goes down and prolactin goes up. And,
Yes.
I mean, we don't produce milk, but the hormone still goes up
Yes.
in the male body. And that's what causes the weight gain.
And if parents are close during the pregnancy, their hormonal shifts parallel, and the father is generally more engaged in the pregnancy.
Even in the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And father's behavior can put a pregnancy at risk and impact things like birth weight. So
stressed out, and that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Yeah.
because stressed
And I mean,
out
sometimes
mothers.
both parents are stressed out about what's going to happen, how are they going to pay for this,
Yeah.
whatever. So that can impact the whole pregnancy. And if everybody's a little bit more relaxed and excited and positive about
Right.
it has more positive impacts.
So babies and fathers become attached in the same way and at the same time as babies and mothers do. And so we need to stop telling fathers that they are irrelevant.
Yep.
So that was basically the message of chapter 3. And chapter 4 is a discussion of fathering among various species. So rats and penguins and monkeys and seahorses.
So there's definitely a lot of research.
Yeah.
But then they took from that and did some research on humans, what they could.
Right.
That was appropriate. Because in a lot of the animals, they were able to look at the brains and the hormones and other aspects, which we wouldn't be able to do in humans. But basically, across the animal kingdom and including humans, males engage deeply with their offspring.
And human and animal fathers demonstrate enormous flexibilities. And what I found interesting is that fathers can actually suffer postpartum depression.
Yeah, and it might be less severe than the mothers, or they can happen in tandem, or often they are supporting the mothers through their postpartum blues. And once the mothers are starting to recover, the father can sink into a postpartum depression, but it often is ignored.
Yes. And fathers' involvement with their children is an indispensable feature of human existence. But it was really interesting. I mean, I think we know a lot about penguins, but the penguin father sits with the eggs while the mother goes off and feeds and gets strong enough to nurse the baby, basically, or like look after the baby.
Right.
And yeah, it was very interesting to hear some of the
What happens in the-
intensely father heavy relationships of some species. So, and then chapter 5, it is crucial to understand how the family system works and to know that the adults have formed an alliance with each other. So the question is like, do the parents have a plan with shared goals and a division of chores that suits them both? Because families are really like ecosystems of interdependence.
And rather than always slide into the cultural norms of, well, women do this and men do that, it's better to look at the strengths of each parent and have them take on those chores that suit their strengths better. Rather than relegate it, well, the men always have to mow the lawn, or the women always have to wash the clothes,
or be the stay-at-home parent.
Or be the stay-at-home parent.
Because I mean, certainly in our case, we shared that load.
Yep.
So and they actually kind of delve into the question about what hard evidence is there to support the notion that children relate uniquely to their mothers. Because fathers are wired to respond to their children. Their brains are engaged, and there's a lot of research around that proves that.
And there's some hormone differences. So women have oxytocin and men have oxytocin, but the levels won't rise as high in men. But men have vasopressin, in higher amounts, and vasopressin is the hormone for connection for men.
Yes.
So, like a child crying, like a father can learn to read his child. Is this a hungry cry? Is this a painful cry?
Right.
Is this just tired and fussy? The fathers can learn that too. It's not a special magical gift that mothers have.
No, and fathers and mothers are equally capable of engaging in second-by-second synchrony with their infant. Mothers are not unique, and fathers who are engaged have babies and toddlers who sleep better and are less aggressive.
Yeah,
So
which is
that's, I
interesting.
found that interesting too.
In chapter 6, it moved on to talk about supportive parenting on the part of fathers is linked to a boost in children's intellectual development and in their language abilities. So, I mean, I know we have the word mother's tongue,
Yeah.
but actually both parents influence the development of language and of cognition.
And it says, and I think a lot of us feel that, you know, children need to be stimulated and pushed and encouraged to take risks. And it is as great a need as stability and security. And fathers need to have an activation relationship with their children that fosters children opening up to the world.
Yeah. So
Because mothers have that tendency. And that's,
to
I think,
shelter and protect.
protect, right?
Which is to keep the species going.
Right.
The mothers have that role, and the fathers can too.
Yes.
But we also the species won't keep going if the infants don't have any survival
Right.
skills.
Yes.
So the fathers,
That's part
in
of-
nature, the fathers teach the survival skills often.
Yes.
And
And
even
even-
humans, the fathers tend to be have more play or a different type of play.
Yes.
And it's not always rough necessarily.
And I think some of that is cultural too.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, fathers who play, read, take their kids on outings, and help care for them have fewer behavioral problems in early school years and less delinquency or criminal behavior. So, I mean, the message here, and I think that's a message, you know, in school. I was actually just having a conversation with my osteopath today about his frustration around the kindergarten program that his son is in, where there's this huge large screen touch TV. And he said, I'm trying to limit my kids
from being on screens,
and then they go to school and it's just all over the place. And he wants his kids, like, you know, and if it's a rainy day, they don't go outside at all. Why can't they put on, I mean, if you look at kindergartens in Finland,
they're out in the mud.
They're rolling, like they literally jumping off things into mud puddles.
Yeah.
And they're wrapped in plastic and they just get dirty, and that's
and
just
they come
how it
in
is.
And they change.
Yeah, and that's how it is. So I think we do need to take a lesson about play.
Yeah.
And as mothers, I think we need to really consider the fact that, yes, it is important for fathers to have that time to play with their kids without mothers going, oh, be careful, watch, don't break, don't do that. That bubble wrapping comes more from mothers, I think, than it does from fathers usually.
I think so. And then this speaks also to the bigger picture of economic pressures and expectations of men to work longer hours. And even, when we were at church, the expectation was that men serve on more committees and be more involved in the evenings and basically leave the moms with the kids.
Yeah, again.
And not being around with the kids to do some of this other care of play and reading and talking.
Right. And I mean, we have this whole thing of men with little kids. Like we have that whole, there's almost a cultural fear that men are going to do something to little kids.
Yes. That they're creepy.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, but that's all cultural. That's not.
And that's fear mongering. And I'm not sure why that started.
So then there's a whole chapter on teenagers, and they talk about a strong association between father absence and daughters having accelerated reproductive development, like even to the point of getting their periods early, and higher sexual risk-taking. So growing up with an emotionally or physically distant father in early to middle childhood could be a key life transition that alters sexual development.
They still don't have any research to prove
Why?
why this happens. The research just shows that it does. So there was a project where they would find sisters who were at least 4 years apart in age or older, and the eldest had grown up into young adulthood with the father in the marriage and the marriage intact. But then the parents divorced, and the younger daughter lived through her growth into teenagers without the father, or the father being absent. And the pattern was that the younger sisters tended to have riskier sexual behavior, and the older sisters seem to have more balance around all of that. And not enough research has been done about sons of absent fathers, except that there were sons who were fathered by teenage boys, and they tended to become fathers when they were teenagers. So,
Right.
I mean, there's that stereotype that, the single mom daughter is a single mom.
Yes. And it does happen.
And it does happen. Well,
Yeah, we know that for sure.
Well, remember when we were in the hospital and there was a
Yeah.
13-year-old that had a baby when Zachary was born.
Yeah.
And her mother was also proud because she had her daughter when she was 16. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the research is showing that teenage boys have the same kind of tendency. And yes, there's so many other factors like socioeconomics and education levels that it's really hard to discern what plays into the situation.
Right, for sure. I can't make that move. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
You did talk about the oxytocin.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
not what it does is help them better bond with children, and it lowers impatience, discontent, and eye rolling.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Other research shows how men's oxytocin increases when they bond with their children through play and exploration, whereas in women, the increased oxytocin levels increase with high levels of affectionate contact. So paternity leave and an appropriate work-life balance in homes where men are gone for work long hours are crucial for healthier bonding for fathers and their children.
Yeah. Other studies of parents and teenagers show that when fathers, more than mothers, reject their teenage children or are perceived to, the young people develop more hostile, negative, and unstable attitudes and behaviors. Adults are more empathetic with others. So once we become adults, I guess, if they had fathers who spent more time with them as children and adults, they have more emotional intelligence.
Well, and that kind of does explain, a generation of fathers, like a generation of fathers that have become children that have become fathers when it was culturally more traditional for fathers to be very hands-off.
To be very hands-off.
So this is a whole relearning
Mm-hmm.
and a rejection of a certain culture that, can really make a difference for kids. So our responsibility as caregivers, scientists, policymakers, mental health professionals, and concerned citizen is that every young child should be given the opportunity to learn how to love, and every parent should receive some kind of guidance on how to make that happen. So, we talk about the fact that, you have to, take lessons to drive a car and whatever, but parenting just happens. And
you might be lucky to have the birthing lessons for that experience, but there's no manual on being fathers.
And we do kind of live a bit more of a siloed life, and people are like, there's all these there's parenting movements, but there's not often movements where like you have enough people who have had experience parenting who are not trying to be judgmental, but just listen and try to, understand what's happening, rather than if you just do this, your kid will be fine, because it's not as easy as that.
And
society has changed so much that parenting has had to change with it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like we didn't deal with the amount of screens and social media that kids now are dealing with. And kids walking around at 3 years old with play phones,
Right.
because
But also seeing their parents walk around
with phones,
with their heads down, looking
Yeah,
at
like phones.
and disconnecting
like at
from
the
their
park,
children.
it's insane.
It's sad to see the parents on
Well,
their
even I
phones.
was at the splash pad the other day, and I try not to be like, I'm not scrolling. Like, I have my phone in case someone texts or calls or
Yeah.
whatever, because I have someone else's kids.
Yeah.
So if
No, but you're looking and talking with
But
to
I'm-
the kids and
paying attention once in a while, if they're busy playing, I might read a book,
right.
but I don't think that's a bad example to set,
no.
reading a book.
No.
But I do not
And you
like
have
the
one
idea
ear.
of scrolling, and
Yeah.
I'm engaged with
Yes.
them.
Well, the danger of scrolling is you do shut out
yes,
what's going
you
on
get-
around you. A book, I don't think, can necessarily do it the same.
So, how do fathers behave when they find out their children are at risk? And then they had these suggestions about how to prevent risky behaviors. So,
behaviors.
activities with their families, like eating meals, religious activities, and fun. And fathers who are knowledgeable about their kids' friends and activities.
Well, I knew who our kids' friends were right through high
Yeah.
school.
And the idea of working to break the intergenerational cycle of risk, like the risk of teen pregnancy and that sort of thing,
Mhm.
is to actually work at breaking that intergenerational cycle, which we did a lot.
We worked a
when-
lot at
and
that.
that.
And then the other thing is acceptance, no matter what. So, to go back to the Bible verse of raise your children in the way they should go, that has been so often interpreted to be the parent sets the path and
Mhm.
the kids have to stick to it, and otherwise they're not accepted. But the research is showing that you need to have acceptance, and all you have to do is read the verse differently and say, raise the child in the way he or she should go. So that's more focusing on what's their path and
Yeah.
accepting
And I mean,
supporting them through that.
our goal was never to kind of act surprised when they said certain things.
Yeah.
Like, just to kind of go, okay, all
Oh, yeah,
right.
that's
and
fine. You know,
Talk it through.
about their friends or about what they had tried or whatever.
And the fathers have a big role in helping kids develop empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was reading
so
another.
many men have never been taught that and don't have that. That's where there's a gap generationally,
Yeah.
and so it's going to be important for a man to recognize that and then seek a mentor.
Well, and that I guess is what I was trying to get at before. We don't sort of have this mentorship attitude
Right.
around parenting, because mentorship is a lot different than telling somebody what to do.
It is listening.
Yeah.
And
And the book I was reading today said parenting kind of has 3 roles: boundaries, in that you as a parent set limits that help kids stay safe and
mhm.
whatever, but also validation and empathy are really your roles as a parent.
As a parent.
So, and then chapter 8 was kind of like, what about the man's biological clock, and what are the benefits of genes in older fathers, and what are some of the
dangers
the
of
dangers
older
of older
fathers.
fathering, because we really haven't even talked, like, we don't really
No, I
we
mean,
haven't
so
really
there.
consider it.
So
There's-
there is research that becoming a father later in life increases the odds of several genetic disorders or syndromes like autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, and dwarfism. And it can also, an older father can contribute more to miscarriage or premature birth. So it's not, it always used to be the mother's
Right.
biological
Yes.
clock was the factor.
Yes.
But they're finding, and it's what they can't figure out is sperm don't get old. They are created new, like every few
Mhm.
days or whatever. But the mechanism of what they're trying to discover is where is the mechanism of when the sperm is made or the cells are grown when the sperm changes genetically.
Yeah.
So they just don't have that answer yet.
But it's not
there are
high percentages.
No, it's not.
No,
high.
it's like 3% of, like, it's,
yeah, the increase is slight.
yes.
But there also are benefits of older genes as well.
Yes.
Um, So it's very interesting. In the States, they don't really track the age of fathers at the time of children's birth. But in Canada, Statistic Canada's has that information. So in 2022, the average age of fathers at the birth of their child was 34.4 years, up from 30 years in 1974. So, so in about 50 years, the average age has gone up by almost 4.5 years. So it's just very interesting to have that kind of statistics.
And so couples are waiting longer to start families because they want to be established in their careers and they want their employers to know they are valuable, so that when flexibility around childcare issues surface, they're more stable.
And having, if you are able to get economically stable in your early 30s, that's one of the benefits of being an older father.
Yes.
Is that
and then
you're
older
not
fathers
over the economic well-being of the family.
Well, the older fathers, however, despite the prediction that they will be less engaged with their children, have proven the research is wrong. They're more engaged in kids' lives, school, extracurricular, and often can provide better economic resources to some degree. And
well, if you think of a man doesn't reach, the brain fully doesn't mature till 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So if a man has children at 22, he's still growing up into a man.
Right.
And if a man is 32, his brain is more mature, so he can handle some of these more other.
Right. And then there's divorce and second marriage, which is also a predictor of older beginnings to fatherhood. And so the average age difference of second wives is 15 years younger than their husbands. So
they are going to father some children. So another positive genetic outcome is that older fathers increase the longevity of their children and grandchildren through their sons.
I thought that was interesting.
Statistic.
And then
I'm lucky because my dad was 40 when I was born.
Yeah.
So our sons will have longer longevity.
Yeah.
By statistically.
Statistically, yeah. So chapter 9 just talks about division of household chores is as old as farming, but now that many jobs don't require the muscle strength that men have naturally more of than women on average, this doesn't have to be true anymore, but many families quickly slip into the pattern. It can be disrupted by fathers modeling different behaviors.
So they did do extensive research on amount of work that mothers and fathers do, both paid and unpaid work. So unpaid work included anything happening once the parent walked in the door or parked the car in the driveway, whatever. So fathers spend 54 hours per week on both paid and unpaid work, and mothers spend 52.7 hours per week in paid and so men are working 2 hours more than women.
Yeah.
If you add up both paid and unpaid. So they're working roughly the same amount, and this research was collected from 1965 to 2011, so it's not that old, and it's extensive over several generations worth, and also cultural shifts of how many women are at work versus at home.
Yes.
So it
Right, of course. So
so basically everyone is doing more work.
Yes. And during a first pregnancy, modern fathers often believe they will do more than their share of the work, especially compared to their own father's involvement. Mm-hmm. But when the baby arrives, men are surprised that they aren't doing as much as they thought. And in fact, many are working more paid hours to offset the costs of the new baby human in the household. So,
and anecdotally, most humans whose father was disconnected from them because of culture, war, poverty, divorce, and millions of unique situations will feel a vacancy because their father wasn't present in their lives or was destructive if around. So this is both the daughters and sons.
Right. And then what happens then is that the court systems in many countries exclude fathers who do desire to be present in their children's lives and those who want to father decently. So a stay-at-home father, even if working part-time, is judged for not supporting their family financially. And I believe that that's still
that happened to me.
Yeah, and I believe it's still the case for sure. And then there's this thing called maternal gatekeeping, and it's a controversial notion that women might actually block men's participation in housework and childcare.
because men don't do it as well as they do in
In the
women's
same
perception.
way.
Well, it isn't going to be the same way, but the judgment is that the men are shamed, and so then if they're shamed, they're going to quickly let go.
Yes,
like,
for sure.
I'm walking away from
I
this.
can't cook, or I don't know
Yeah.
what.
Oh, I might shrink the clothing.
Yeah,
or
whatever. Who cares, right? And kids without fathers or father figures playing an active role in their lives face greater risks. And we need to change our societal beliefs and accept men as equal parents, because fatherhood is about helping children become happy and healthy adults who are at ease in the world and prepared to become fathers or mothers themselves.
We need a world where fathers are shown, expected, and encouraged to be competent and comfortable with their children. That is what is best for kids.
So, I mean, we've given you the highlights of the book. There's a lot of detailed
stuff.
information. And I'm reading a book right now called Good Inside, but it's actually a parenting book that kind of talks about how, kids are trying to be good. Like, it is within their nature to be good, and it's actually quite an interesting book. So I was thinking, after the mothering, the fathering, maybe we want to talk the parenting piece. So
that would be
I'll
great.
see how the book pans out. But anyway, so then at the end of the month, we're going to let you talk about 10 ways to uncomplicate fatherhood.
Okay. Sounds
I
great.
thought that
I'm
was a
looking
good
forward to it.
line to go. I'm going to do my 10 ways. You can do your 10 ways, and we'll see how they compare,
That'll be
because
great,
I
for
think
sure.
we have complicated fatherhood.
I think so. For
We've
sure.
made it so that fathers feel as if they are not as important in the grand scheme, and
In the
that all
grand
we
scheme of
want is
things.
basically their paycheck.
Yep.
And that's not,
And that's, and some men will take that on as the challenge and rise to the occasion, but shut themselves off from other things.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about that next week.
Yeah, you can do that.
So I just
thanks.
wanted to wish all the listeners who are fathers a happy Father's Day. And for those of you who have a father in your life or know a father that you're close to as a friend, please share the link to this podcast, and hopefully they'll enjoy the listening and see that they are valuable in their children's lives.
All right, so thanks for joining us. No Room for Phonies. And the book, I can't remember the title of it right now. It's a long title. Do Fathers Matter? That shouldn't have been too hard to remember.
No, but it's what science is telling us about the parent we've overlooked.
So thanks for joining us on No Room for Phonies, and happy Father's Day.
Good night.